All right, thank you guys for being on the call today. This is our 4-color personality calls. We are super, super lucky to have a guest green on the call today, Diamond Rachel Nagel. But before I turn it over to her, I'm just going to recap really quickly the 4 colors and give a little bit of info about the greens. And then I'm going to hand it over to her so she can tell us all about what it's like to be a green and how to appeal to greens in your Plexus business. So this is the last call. If you're just jumping on, we have done 1 call for every color. So definitely check those out. They're on YouTube. You know, there's tons of personality tests out there. But the reason we like this one is that Big Al wrote this book, The 4-Color Personality, specifically for network marketing. And most of the time, guys, when somebody tells you no to Plexus, they're not saying no to you. They're not even saying no to Plexus. They're just saying no to the words you're using. So everyone falls into these 4-color personalities. Just a couple things to keep in mind, though. While most of us have 1 color that is a little more dominant and really drives us in our decision making, we usually have at least 2, though, that are pretty high on the score. So a couple things to note. 1 color doesn't define anyone, right? But we are going to be using very exaggerated examples when we're talking about the colors just to get our points across. So today is green, and when we think of greens, we think of 1 word, we think of data, right? Greens are the ones who want all of the information. They love the information. They love the details. You cannot give a green too much information. My husband is a green, which makes sense because he's a scientist. So when you think of other greens, you typically think of engineers, scientists, accountants, people who are really into occupations that have a lot of data. Now, greens, though, a lot of people think that they're boring and they're nerdy and they're not social. That's really not true for the most part. They are just all about the facts and the logic, and they make their decisions typically based on those facts and that logic, not necessarily emotion. Where if you remember the blues make a decision and then figure out the information later, right? Not the greens. So think of like Spock from Star Trek. He was all about the information. He's a green. Now, unlike our yellows that are like our professional huggers, greens are typically the anti-huggers, okay? They are not the people person. They're the ones that if you're a blue or a yellow and you hug them, they kind of go like this. Like you don't get a big hug back from greens, right? Now, you know someone is a green when you're talking to them about Plexus because you can't give them enough information. Especially if you're a blue or a red and you want action right away, that's not going to work with a green. You're going to have to give them, remember, we're exaggerating, but you're going to have to give them a 3-hour presentation. They're going to request that you send them more documents in email. They're going to research it on 44 different websites. They're going to create their own Excel spreadsheet. They're going to research every single ingredient in the product. So if you're looking and you're talking to a green and you want them to make a fast decision, you're going to be disappointed. So this is why it's important to recognize people's colors, right? Because if you're a red or a blue, you're going to have to be patient if you're talking to a green. They drive reds and blues crazy because they delay those decisions. Reds and blues are quick to act. Greens, though, their motivation is not to drive you crazy. It's really because they want all the information and they actually want to run through all possible scenarios so they don't make a mistake. That's what's great about greens. Once they make a decision, they're going to stick with it. There's no buyer's remorse for greens because they've already thought through all of those scenarios, okay? Now, greens make great leaders because of this, because if somebody on their team has asked a question, a green is already going to know the answer. And they spend the time watching the videos, reading the documents, attending the training calls. So if you remember, if you've been on our other calls, we use this scenario about a big meeting or a big banquet. And we talk about what each color would do when they walk into that big banquet room full of people. Remember, the reds, they go to the front of the room, they take charge, they tell everyone to sit down that the meeting's getting started. The blues don't hear the reds because they're in the back at the biggest table chatting and laughing, right? The yellows, they're the ones that bring the cookies to the banquet, and they're the ones that sit with the lonely guy at the table. So what do the greens do? The greens don't go to the meeting, right? If it's up to the greens, they stay home, they watch it streaming. they don't go to the big banquet. That's too many people. Now that's typical. If they are at the meeting, they're probably the ones at their computer already, got their computer up, ready to take notes from the PowerPoint. So those are just the scenarios. How do you entice a green? Remember when we talked about the different colors? Okay, so like the yellows, you ask them to bring the cookies. You ask the blue to make others feel comfortable. You ask the red to speak at your meeting. What do you do with the greens? You tell them that you need their input. You need their help researching something for you. You need their opinion, right? But let's hear from a green herself. So Rachel, if you can just tell us kind of what got you interested in Plexus, what motivates you as a green, and why you stay.
Okay. I was laughing so hard when you were going through the extreme scenarios about like hugs and stuff like that, because I was one of the Super Saturday presenters, and I really had to get over the aversion of lots of hugs from people that I don't know. And so I think like I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what enticed me to begin with? If you've heard my story before, some of you may have, some of you may not. I went through about a 5-year period of what I unaffectionately refer to as hormone hell. My body, coming out of college, I had battled an eating disorder, and I think that just set me up for a lot of hormone dysregulation. When I got engaged, I got on birth control. That further messed up my hormones. Then it was time to start a family, and we had difficulty getting pregnant. And it was really just like a Lemony Snicket series of unfortunate events. And I was so bought into sort of the Western medicine model that was the only route that I knew to go. And when it failed me, and I mean, I don't think that I'm not for Western medicine. I am, but I needed to understand what the root cause of what was going on in my body was, because everything that doctors were trying to do was not working. And so I like to think that in my former life, I was probably more of a yellow, but because of that series of unfortunate events, it really pushed or brought out the green side of me. I love that you pointed out that, we usually have, at least one other color that can be fairly strong as well. So by the time I found Plexus, I had 2 children. I had gone through severe postpartum depression. I had multiple diagnoses for hormone issues, and I'd had the great fortune of finding a functional medicine doctor who had really gotten me to about 85%. Mm-hmm. But when you're a mom and you've got little kids, I didn't want to be the mom that was plopping my kids in front of the TV after school so that I could take a nap on the couch until their dad got home from work. And so at this point, I had really shifted into looking at root causes, researching, looking at, I had a supplement cabinet that was, bursting at the seams. And the first person that I saw post about Plexus on Facebook was somebody that I knew that was pretty holistically minded too. So that intrigued me. Mm-hmm. That was like, if it had been anybody else posting about it, I don't know that I would have given it the validity that I did. And so I really set out initially to start saying all of the reasons. Let me research this. Of course I said, I didn't even go to her. I went to like the company website and started looking at, all of the ingredients and cross-referencing that with the, the diagnoses and things that I had in areas that I struggled with. And what I found was that not only were these ingredients like safe and great and wonderful, they were kind of the missing link for that last 15% of fatigue and brain fog and weight that just wouldn't budge for me. Energy was a big issue for me, and I looked totally normal, totally healthy on the outside, but my blood work showed that I was pre-diabetic, going into insulin resistance. And so the fact that it addressed blood sugar was a huge win for me. Now, we joke when we go back through the timeline of the first time that I messaged, not my direct upline, but her sponsor, that it probably took about about 30 days to get me on board. And what's funny about it is that you said that about Greens not wanting to be at the meeting. But it was the fact that I saw somebody, Andrea Mitchell is not my direct upline, but the one above that. And she was the one that was posting about Plexus. And she was attending Super Saturday. And I thought, I didn't know then that she was such a blue. And of course, she was just there for the party. As a green, it registered to me as like, oh, she's information driven. Mm-hmm. She wants to know more about how to do this. So even though I myself didn't want to be at the meeting, it was very appealing to me. It came across to me that it was like, she's taking this very seriously. This is legitimate to her. This is a legitimate business opportunity. And I had already been trying the products as a retail customer because I wasn't going to buy into anything until, I had actually taken the products and tried them and researched the money back guarantee and all of those things. So that's really what appealed to me and how I got on board to begin with. Now, I really just wanted to get my products covered. It wasn't, we were not in a financial situation where I could afford to take the products if I didn't have money coming in to help me cover them. And so Andrea and Becky, my upline, reassured me that, that I, if I got 3 to 5 people, which was mortifying to me that I was going to have to actually reach out to people about this because I was a self-proclaimed network marketing hater. That's another thing that I love that you said, that people aren't saying no to Plexus. They're not saying no to you. They're saying no to whatever their perception is of network marketing. And maybe they're bringing a previous experience to the table. For myself, my mom had gotten heavily involved in a network marketing company that had a hefty buy-in, and eventually ended up having to declare bankruptcy because of that. And so I had, there were some definite red flags about it. So the fact that it was $34.95, the fact that it was only my own products, the fact that there was no inventory, those were things that, began to make me feel comfortable and confident in the compensation plan. Now, a side note to this is that in those years of the hormone hell that I talked about, I had been told that I needed to be gluten-free. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people I was gluten-free before it was cool to be gluten-free. And before there were, stores that even carried gluten-free product. And so I had started this page at the time. We lived in Amarillo, Texas, which is in the Panhandle. I had started this page that was called West Texas Gluten Free. And I would post on there gluten-free recipes and, places that you could go that had good gluten-free menus. I'm so sorry. That's okay. That had good, gluten-free. So what I'm saying is that, and because I've been very public with my struggle, when you're going through a difficult time, you'll reach out to any resource that you can. So if I saw somebody post something about, their thyroid, I would message them and get information. And so what I didn't realize is that I had built a network of people who really relied on me for good information, for thoroughly researched information about various things. And so I think that is why I had a lot of success early on. I reached Emerald within 7 months. Mm-hmm. It was because of that strong research background. And I remember getting asked the question, why is this different? Why should we buy in? And, like you said, for a green, I was like, well, I'm going to answer every point of that. Mm-hmm. And so I went into the science behind the products. And I think that's one of the things that's going to really help us all moving forward with onboarding greens is all of the great work that compliance is doing with the clinical studies and the research. And I got to attend Jewel leadership training with Sarah's husband, Gavin, in November. And Chris Reed came in and talked to us. And Taryn, you were there too, right? Yeah. And And I was, just eating up every word that he had to say. And knowing that, not only is it just the initial clinical study on triplex, they're doing a much longer term, broader one that they actually intend to have published in peer-reviewed journals. I mean, that's huge. And those are the kind of things that are going to be really, it's a struggle right now, because we've been able to give third-party validation and say, well, here's a great research article on the benefits of, the particular version of chromium that we use. But now we're going to actually have like the studies of our actual product to back that up. So moving forward, I think that's going to be a huge thing for your greens. And I also love, Amy, that you pointed out, once you get us, we're not going anywhere. We are, anytime my husband is asked to describe me, he says she's loyal to a fault. Absolutely loyal to a fault. And so part of the reason that we will be reticent to just jump in like a blue or a red is not just because we're information driven, it's because we highly, highly value relationships and our integrity. And that was a big thing for me. And it was a huge compliment when one of my emeralds said to me, she said one time when somebody said, "What made you join?" And she said, "Well, I trusted Rachel. Anything she did, I knew she had researched and had, basically taken the guesswork out of it for me." And so that trustworthiness is really important to greens. So we may be slow to the decision-making process, but once we get there, you've got us.
I love that. So other than, and I love that you pointed about the studies, because I think especially for reds and blues, even yellows, we are hesitant to post about those on Facebook. And maybe it's because we are not the data people, so we're terrified somebody's then going to ask us a question about it.
Yes.
So other than sharing more about the clinical studies, what other things do you think would attract greens for somebody who's not a green?
I think anything that seems more information driven and not just something that's easily manipulated. I know that we all kind of have our own frustrations about not being able to do our own before and afters anymore. But if you tell a green, look, these before and afters have been vetted, they go through our compliance department, there are specific criteria that they have to meet, because we've all seen the pictures where it's pretty obvious that it's just been taken at a really good angle. And we've seen enough of those posted by other companies or other opportunities, or even just, the like ads that you see for even weight loss that you could get at GNC. I hate to say that greens are always, there's an element of like suspicion to it, but there is that thing of, a blue is like, I don't want you to explain it to me. I just want to know if it works. Right. A green is like, I want you to explain to me how it works. And so really understanding, there's just a couple of simple takeaways too that you can say, knowing that if you don't have excess sugar circulating in your blood, it can't be stored as fat. So if you've got a product that helps to stabilize your blood sugars, then the natural, progression of that is that there's going to be weight loss. You flip the switch from your body, burning muscle for energy, and instead it starts to burn fat for energy. So it doesn't have to be, we have to be very careful now. In the beginning, I could pull a research article from somewhere or take something that I read and post it and say, hey, read this. This is exactly what I've been telling you guys about plexus.
Right.
And we just can't do those things anymore. So that's not to say that they can't be shared privately. If you've got somebody that that's agreeing and you come across some article that you think would be fantastic, or a book or something like that. I just purchased, what's his name? Travis Stork. He's on The Doctors.
Yeah.
he has a great book out that's basically everything we've been telling people for 2 years. But the thing about Plexus that I think also intrigued me is that we were talking about gut health before anybody else was.
Mm-hmm.
And we were making those connections about gut health and weight loss before any other company out there was. And I actually have an app on my phone called Nutra Ingredients, and it follows the latest trends in what they call the nutraceutical, which would be nutritional supplement market. Mm-hmm. And it said a year ago that the 3 fastest growing markets for supplements would be probiotics, aloe vera, and omegas. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, absolutely. And that's I think things like that can be very validating to a green, that it's like, oh, this isn't a fly by night company. Right. This isn't something that, it's chemically laden and the FDA is going to come in and, cause them to have to reform. There's just, I think if you can back it up with stuff like that, right, it'll help your greens out.
I love that. And I love what you said too, just about the simple sentence you could put in there with the before and after, just to let all the greens know the validation that goes into that. Because I've shared the approved before and afters, but never thought to put that one little sentence in there. As a green though, so you've got all the information, we've got you guys on board. How do you keep a green motivated though to work your business and run with it?
Well, obviously what motivates, but maybe this is bringing a little bit of red in, but, the paycheck was great. There's nothing as validating as earning a paycheck within your first month. I think the faster you can get people to silver and earning, $500 a month that's going to be really hard for most people to walk away from, because for the average family, we know that $500 is a life-changing amount of money per month. So that was big for me. But the other thing was, it's exactly what you pointed to in the very beginning in your description. I felt very validated that it's kind of that whole, people will work harder for praise than they will for pay. Well, a green will work harder for somebody putting a question out on the team page, and if somebody tagged me in it because they thought I would know the answer to it, even if I didn't know the answer, I would take the time to figure it out. And so that kind of helped build my confidence in the fact that I was needed, the fact that there was a place for me, that I was valued, even if it wasn't, the leaderboard every week or, the highest PV on the team. That sense of being needed and that what you bring to the team is essential and that it's valued.
I love that. I would not have even thought about something like that, because I would have thought, I'm a blue. I would have thought, oh yeah, she's green. Let's let her run a training call. She knows all the information.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I do. If I can't tell you how many product calls I have done for people. Right. And I'm having now to kind of learn to build my strengths in other areas, because it's really easy to rely on the product knowledge that I have. And I kind of have this freakish ability to remember all kinds of, my teammates call me Cliff Clavin. So it's really easy to rely on that strength and just kind of defer to it. But so it's also good, to try to push us out of our comfort zone, like you just said, and say, hey, we really want to bring you in on this team call to break down. And not all greens may be product people. You mentioned before the love of spreadsheets and the love of, numbers. I think you've kind of got your science people, which I was a former science teacher, so I fit into that category. Right. And then you've got your numbers people. And so you can have a green that's really, really strong in the comp plan as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a great point, because I think you're right. We tend to think the products, that's what the greens want all the information about, when they may want all the details about the comp plan or doing projections and ranking up. So that's a good reminder. Well, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I don't think we have any more questions. I got the ones that people were chatting in there. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope it was good. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.